my creative process has been really embodied in movement. Even as a little boy, I loved dancing. As I grew, I became a hockey player and creative in the way I moved with the puck and all the people. And then later on, I got into martial arts. And so the embodiment has been a really big medicine for me. The stability really came in when I found this Qigong practice. And it was really gave me a root that I never had before. And that was like my Lord Dantian. It was this embodiment of integration of the mind, the energy, the physical, and something just would come alive through that process and awaken and give me a clarity and just a deep inner strength,
Hello, and welcome to The Art of Lost and Found, a podcast that explores the creative relationship between our inner and outer worlds. It's a creative exploration through stories, insights, resources, and tools to help you intentionally design your life and work. I'm your host, Brooke Eston, also known as the Creative Amplifier. I'm part strategist, part designer, part coach, and part artist. And I'm dedicated to helping fellow creatives bridge the gaps between those big dreams and practical realities. Today on the Art of Lost and Found podcast, we welcome Rudy Hexter. Rudy is a man of many talents. He's a builder of homes that are designed to facilitate thriving, as well as being a teacher of Qigong and the Life Mandala Training. Rudy navigated a chaotic upbringing full of instability, where love felt conditional and fragile. He found himself drawn to embodiment practices as a way of grounding himself through the chaos of this experience. On the podcast, he shares how building community and engaging in circle work has helped him explore many limiting beliefs about his relationship to others, as well as to himself, that were preventing him from feeling a sense of acceptance and home. Join us in the first of this two-part interview as we explore how community and deep inner reflection can help us learn to nurture ourselves and in turn, teach and support others. Welcome to the Art of Lost and Found podcast, Rudy. I'm so excited to have you on today.
It's nice to be here. I love this subject.
So for us to sort of set a little bit of context here and help the listeners to understand a little bit about you and the context of your life, can you just give us a brief overview about who you are and what you're doing in this moment in your life?
Who I am.
A big one.
Yeah, it's a constant discovery of that. And, life has been a journey and unraveling of those elements and pieces. They say it takes 7 years to create a program, 40 years to break it. And I feel like I'm in that process right now, of the rebuilding. Right now I live on Salt Spring Island. I'm a builder. I built my own house. I love building and designing and working with clients and creating a home that can facilitate thriving, with nature and the creative process of what that brings. I also teach Qigong and am starting a business called the Life Mandala Training. And so it's an exploration of all the spheres of our life and activating all those elements in those spheres.
But to give us a little bit more context about how you made your way into that world, which I think is fascinating, because so many of the people that I talk to and bring on this podcast are people who don't work with their hands. We mostly speak with digital entrepreneurs or different service providers. So I'm especially interested in speaking with somebody who is so embodied and connected to the natural elements, because so many of the digital entrepreneurs I speak to are craving that and longing for that reconnection. So to help us understand a little bit of your backstory, what would be helpful for us to know about you around your childhood? Some defining moments or defining contexts that help shape the person that I'm speaking to today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can start with my mother. She had me when she was 16 years old. She comes from a pretty big family. She had like 9 other siblings, and a mother who was drinking and going to the bar. And she, from what I understand, she was out on her own when she was 13, and then she had me when she was 16. And so I can't imagine that process for her, and how that radiated into my life, and a lot of kind of my discoveries have been from my aunties, who I'm still really close with, and just sharing a little bit about that past, which, from a child's eyes, you don't really see what was happening on that level. And so one of those the ways that translated to me was my voice was very, and my innocence was very shunned at an early age, and that there's been such tremendous gifts in that process. I became very introverted, and I had my own little inner world, and so that was very special. At the same time, I didn't have that social intelligence, and I didn't have that warmth of feeling from others. So that became something that I was kind of isolated and hidden. And my family, a beautiful family, I love them, but they all had like gambling, and some sort of addictions. And my mom ended up getting involved with this man when I was 8 years old, and he became like a father figure because I never really had a father figure. And we would go out ice fishing, and he would help me with hockey, and we'd go for long hikes, and it was a beautiful bond. But I remember like him coming home from nights of being out partying, and with his teeth smashed in and blood and just all these things, because it was such a party environment with my mom and him, and all my aunties, and that world. And um, so eventually they ended up breaking up, and we moved up to Fort McMurray, and he moved to Vancouver, and he cleaned himself up and really got clean. He became, I don't know if he was a Christian at this time, but he ended up like starting a carpentry business, got married, had kids. And he still had that relationship with me, and he knew my family, and he knew that line that I was going down, and he really wanted to influence that, and shift that. So he brought me to Vancouver, and he uh, got me a job and had me stay in the guest room in his basement. But I ended up like just partying and staying out all night and sleeping in, and then that went on for months. And then finally he came down one day, and he just gave it to me. Like, he just told me how self-centered I was, and all these things that were really true. And that just really was a pivoting point in my life, and was probably the best thing anybody has ever done for me. It was like that real tough love, and he basically was kicking me out, and it just pissed me off. There was a fire that got lit in me, and I was like, I'll show you, and and uh and so he had this library of personal development, and he had the whole like Anthony Robbins tapes, and all these John Kehoe, and So I just immersed myself in that, and I just like transformed my life, and it has been an ongoing journey of that process. Like he really set something in motion there, and I owe all that where I am today because of that moment.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. How old were you when that moment happened?
I was in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I personally have been navigating and witnessing a lot of people around me navigating also is, when is the moment in which somebody who's in that self-centered, self-focused, self-destructive mode, when is the moment where that type of conversation can actually be heard, right? Because perhaps if he would have tried to do that when you were younger, you could have rebelled even harder,
Mm.
right? Or ghosted him, or I'll show you, you don't know what's best for me, I'm out of here, and gone on a completely different path, instead of being able on some level to receive what he was saying to you, to the point that it invited you to take an action in his library, right? It wasn't a fuck you, I'm out of here, and going completely to the other direction. Um, so what do you think it was about that moment, or that time, or that delivery, that allowed you to be able to receive it instead of just resist it even harder?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know about the timing of that, and if that would have been the case early on or any other timing. But it's interesting you saying those words, "Fuck you, I'm out of here." That was like my mom's, like that was her phrase, you know?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she would just bolt, and she never really was able to stay and be with those traumas that were kind of underneath that phrase, you know? So anyway, when you said that, it just really brought that up about my mother.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, I think there's a mystery there in the timing of it all, and just how that orchestrates in our life, and there's a lot of curiosity around that, and just trust in the timing, and saying yes to how life moves through us, and helps guide us, you know.
Do you remember what some of those foundational um, epiphanies or realizations or perspective shifts that you first started to get going through that library?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the details. I remember, like, the process, and that there was a lot of like major ahas and inspirations, and then a lot of major like falling down, and like and just reigniting that. I remember that fire just keep coming in, like, with certain jobs I'd be kind of just putzing around and lazy, and then I'd get fired, and then that fire would be like, okay, let's get back up, and just really, there was just something about that fire that just kept coming into my life, and pushing me for greatness.
What kind of relationship did you have with your creative self in your childhood? Like, you mentioned that you had a very active internal world because probably some escapism or self-protection regarding the environment that you grew up in. And then this father figure, him being in construction and working with his hands and making things. I'm curious as to how you developed your own unique flavor of creativity. But first, what was expressed, or what did you experiment with as a creative space for you in your childhood?
I think one of my biggest memories, and this I feel was a pivoting point in this something happened when I was about 4 years old, where I just remember that love for my mother, and then I found out at some point she went away for a few months actually, and I can't remember that, but she went on a little drug binge, according to what I remember my auntie saying. And I remember this point where she came back, and I thought a witch took over her and put her in the closet, like her essence in the closet, because we had a really deep connection. And around that time, I remember like playing with the flies on the wall and just creating this like game with them. And I remember like having like markers and just drawing on the walls and the blankets. But throughout my life, I think I've been really, my creative process has been really embodied in movement. Um, Even as a little boy, I loved dancing. And then as I grew, I became a hockey player and creative in the way I moved with the puck and all the people. And then later on, I got into martial arts. And so the embodiment has been a really big medicine for me throughout my life. Yeah. And dancing and capoeira and Qigong and all these things. And even carpentry, there's something that just I feel really grounds me when I'm in those embodied practices.
Did you feel like, and this is just a hypothesis on my end, so if this doesn't fit, please just, say so. But considering you grew up in an environment that seems to be so unstable, do you feel like you being able to create your own stability, your own physical stability, by making your own house that you live in now, is in any way part of your honoring of your younger self that didn't have that structure and that stability?
Yeah, I think the stability really came in when I found this qigong practice, and it was really gave me a root that I never had before, and that was like my Lord Dantian. It was this embodiment of integration of the mind, the energy, the physical, and something just would come alive through that process and awaken and give me a clarity and just a deep inner strength, and that was like rooted in our lower dantian, our lower energy centers, and that's where all life begins, is in the navel there with the umbilical cord. And that's where we began with our qigong process. And then right from that, I found home. I found home here on Salt Spring. I found home in the community. I found home, in building my own home and developing a relationship with the land and community, in a long-term place where I never had that before. So it's been a lot of like opening up new worlds for me, and particularly in community where I never thought was possible. I never seen those models. I've always seen like relationships being dramatic and not really thriving, and beauty and love and fellowship and warmth, all these aspects. And so I've really discovered that in this community, and discovered what home feels like. That was a real deep inquiry to me, like what is home.
Yeah, I can relate to that from a very different type of experience, because I didn't have stability as much, or consistency and stability in my cultural environment, growing up in different places and not feeling like I was at home in any place. But it comes from a different place. But I know that longing and that searching. And I think so many of us who grow up in environments either that aren't safe for us or aren't stable, or just don't feel totally aligned with who we are, will then step out into the world as young adults searching for this sense of home. And there's a lot of false homes out there. There's a lot of people that invite you into spaces that don't serve your highest good, and where you aren't truly safe and deeply connected to other people. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you came into being able to receive that love and that connection and that possibility of something better, right? Because if you come from a background where those models have been absent, or because these usually go together, experiencing a lot of trauma, a lot of times it can be a natural reaction to resist against that. So how did you come into being able to be in this loving, fluid, safe relationship with the community that you've referred to?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. A lot of us have grew up in families where love was conditional. You do this, you get my love. You don't do that, you don't get my love. You know, and I think how that translated in my life was um, trying to better myself through some of these practices, and really aligning myself with just these forces, and trying to be better, and as I got older, I discovered that it's like just opening to who I am without trying to do anything. Just the phenomenon of our beings, is just so miraculous. And so it's really been a lot of acceptance around that. And I think what has really, where I discovered home in the community, was a delightful surprise, whereas like the medicine that I was longing for was actually in the community and doing circle work. And I think that's one of the things I really loved about, being with the Aligned by Design, and what you offered was just that circle work. And I remember there was a time where it really came in for me, where I was going to the yoga center and I really didn't want to go. I felt shitty. I felt ugly. I didn't want anybody to see me. And so it was like that trauma was really alive and at the surface. And I just kind of wanted to do my pattern of hiding. Right. But I went, and the love that I received and how everybody received me just held that peace in me that was not good enough, and I just received that. And I feel like that's one of the big things that's happening here in Salt Spring and the community, is there's a lot of healing around that peace, and through that we can be there for others, and to shine that warmth on others, and just help them be accepted and received and seen. And so, and then it continued on when I started doing pretty strong breath sessions here on the land, and we have retreats, and it was a lot of with breathwave, and there was a lot of circle work and a lot of like vulnerability and authenticity. It was really that field really supported that authenticity and people being real. And I remember so many times, and it still happens, where I just want to that my mom's like saying, fuck you, I'm out of here. It's just so much like strong impulses. And I've learned over the years to be with those impulses like a parent would be with a child. And so that child was like hiding in the closet, and it just didn't want to come out. And so I learned to parent that and to guide it into those situations. And by staying, it reset that program. and it helped open up um, a greater sense of love and acceptance, and to be able to receive that, and it's been such incredible medicine for me, to stand stronger in community and to have my voice heard and received. And it's so precious, and that element of isolation and that inner world and the contemplation and the depth that I would go through that. And now it's like I can come out and share that depth with people, and that piece of my what my soul is here to bring.
Can you share a little bit more about circle work for people who aren't familiar with that? What is it, and how is it different from other types of group work or one-to-one work? Like, what's the magic of the circle work from your perspective?
From my perspective, it feels like it's the medicine of our time. And there's a lot of, I think our culture has been very isolated and divided. And from that, we have competition, and we have all these things, within the work world. And the circle work is is really special because we start to see that we're not alone in our problems and our challenges. And we start to see this common thread. And I feel like through that process, we can see, yeah, like this is part of the process, and we can support each other in that and celebrate, our victories, and support each other in our challenges. And it feels like it's really important work right now to unify us and to be there for each other.
How did you transition from being a newbie in that work to then being more integrated and feeling like that was your home, to now being a type of facilitator and space holder for other people who are seeking their healing?
I think it's been just an ongoing process, and it's really interesting to see that we teach what we want to learn. And so it's, for me, I also feel like I have my ear to the ground, and just really wanting to see what's coming alive, what's wanting to come alive in the community. So it feels like it's a continuous unfolding, and on so many levels, it feels like we haven't even entered into it. I created a kirtan circle here, and so we, about 9 years ago, and we've been gathering once a week for 9 years. And yeah, and so there's something in me that's very rhythmic and stable that way. And a lot of times people come and go, and even though it seems like it's been a long time, at the same time it feels like we haven't even started yet. And so when I say that, there's something whispering that wants to come alive, that creative component that I feel wants our ear. But because of the conditioning and because of the busyness, we don't always fully hear that, you know. Um, so it feels like it's been an ongoing process. It wasn't just like one transition. It was just something that magnetically I've been drawn to, with the Qigong circles, and then the breath work, and then the singing circles. And I'm wanting, and even the circle that you created has inspired me as well, to in the Life Mandala training, to share that process of our relationship with our patterns, our conditioning, and the pieces in our soul that want to get ignited and come alive, and to really be in a circle to be able to share that feels like that's the next transition for me, and to open up those worlds that are wanting to come alive in our hearts. And it's not just for ourselves. It feels like this is a potential for the world to ground in through themselves a powerful force of light and love and union, and to bring those into realities that they can be experienced and seen. And on a lot of levels, I feel like the community I'm in now is a lighthouse, just to show that like this is possible. And I see it happening in so many other communities. I feel like it's a passion of mine to just open up this potential to be able to be in love and fellowship ultimately, you know, and to celebrate our differences and uniqueness, and to be able to trust in each other's innate goodness. Feels like it's a major piece in relationship. And the that's what I'm discovering, is that the best relationship for me that I love is this long-term relationship with ultimately with ourselves and with each other in this community. I've been here for 12 years, and I've been able to be there for others and help them build their homes, to be there when they've been struggling with certain addictions. And now it feels like to celebrate them getting through that, and celebrate them coming alive, and just how much stronger we are together, you know. And again, we haven't even it hasn't even happened yet, like what really that potential, what it can be like. And so a major part of that is, where are we putting our attention, you know. And so it's like, when we put love and fellowship in the center of the mandala, then our thinking, our feeling, our actions all start to revolve around that. And if we don't have that clarity, these unconscious programs are still running the show, so it's awakening to these deeper soul faculties in a way that where we can work with them and guide them and direct them.
Can you give us a little bit more insight into this concept of a life mandala, and what it means for you, and how one would go about working with that?
So there's a lot of the exploration for me in that work is the art of stepping backwards in order to go forward. And this is a deep Taoist concept. And Einstein says you can't solve a problem from the level, that created it. I got that quote wrong. I slowly adjusted to my own my own thing, but which I tend to do.
Yeah, the essence is spot on.
But it's discovering another level within ourselves, and to move from this conditioning, and this, like, our love was conditional, and to access a deeper part of ourselves. And from that is just freeing our mind from everything, and just acknowledging the phenomenon of our being, and awakening that those childlike qualities that want to play. And so a lot of when we get involved in discipline, a lot of times we have guilt and shame around not showing up or whatever. But the Life Mandala Training is really encouraging the playfulness to come back of a child, and to be curious and interested in what these disciplines can bring us. Essentially is the higher self, the faculties of our being, which is limitless, and getting in touch with that. So this going backwards is accessing another level of what I like to say is the master. that lives within ourselves. And it's awake and it's clear and it's in tune. And from that, something else comes forward, this like this dance with life and the elements. So the Life Mandala training is honoring life, it's honoring this incarnation as an opportunity and a precious gift. And so from that, we start to build another ground that we stand on, in which our thinking and our feeling moves from that ground. And so it's honoring all the spheres of our life, our relationship, our health, our nutrition, and the vitality of really coming alive within every cell of our body, and honoring the ancient invitation to know ourselves.
Do you feel like you're able to consistently stay in that energy and in that connection?
It's a constant dance of falling and getting back up,
Yeah.
and it's the process is a lifetime process. And so, but essentially, when we step into this process with awareness, we can start to see our patterns, and we can start to meet ourselves in a different way. We can start getting creative and exploring how we can shift those patterns. And nature is such a beautiful component where, when we can start immersing ourselves in nature, those energies naturally come into us, and they speak to us. Um, I, I love that analogy. To sin is to miss the mark, to repent is to redraw your bow. And so we're constantly, redrawing our bow, and getting back up, and letting go of guilt and shame and all these things. And each day is a brand new day. It's like it's an opportunity for us to really to embrace, all these aspects of life. And the three pillars of the Life Mandala is spirit, health, and dharma. So it's honoring these forces in our life.
What's, from your perspective, the difference between spirit and dharma?
I think they're just various different expressions. And so the center of the mandala is the spirit. And so it's going back into ourselves, which is just pure consciousness. So life, there's nothing and something, and nothing is the mother of something. And so this reversal into the emptiness is not a dead emptiness, it's a living presence, is probably the most precious thing that we can start to become aware of. And so we start to cultivate a discernment between the conditional and the living presence. Conditional being the mind and the thoughts and the emotions, and just how life moves through us. And then the living presence is just really purifying the sky of our consciousness. And so all these somethings are just clouds that are moving through that, and creating a landscape within that. And so we start to develop that relationship. And then the dharma component is our individuality and our piece of God, how God lives through us, which is us, and it's God's expression. I feel like we're just all little fragments of God, and God just wants to know itself through itself, and so when we celebrate our individuality, and really get in touch with our heart and what brings us alive, when we're in our dharma, like our passions, and sharing that peace with the world, is it feels like it's just it's that expression of that clarity and that purity coming through into the world.
I think acknowledging the dance of it is really important. I mean, going back to that feeling of shame or guilt, I can't recall how many people I've heard say, oh, I can't meditate, I'm not good at it, I can't turn my thoughts off. And I just
Right.
want to say to them, like, no, you're missing the point. Like,
Right.
meditation is not a destination. Like, it's a journey. And that's part of the experience of being on the journey. You know, I didn't name this podcast how great it feels to arrive. Like, I named this podcast The Art of Lost and Found, which is, it's the
Right.
same thing that you're speaking to, just using different words. And the by lifting the veil and being able to allow people to see that, yeah, going backwards is part of going forwards, right?
Yeah.
Zigzagging your way through an unfamiliar foreign landscape is wayfinding, and that wayfinding is how you learn what you need to learn and you experience what you need to experience so that you can be in a place where you can find that way of integrating and establishing that sense of peace. And part of my mission with this podcast and with a lot of the work that I do is to invite people into witnessing the entirety rather than just a small fragment, right? The outcome versus the process, or the human doing versus the human being, right? It's so much more than either or. It's this yes and how you navigate that and integrate that and find both your sense of oneness and your sense of identity, right? How can you be that drop of water but also be the whole ocean? And navigating that process, I think, is one of the most worthwhile endeavors that we can embark on in our lifetime, because the gifts that come from that, the change in energy that carries, is, I don't know, it's part of the magic of what makes this life so exciting and mysterious and unknowable, right? There's a knowing and a truth, but at the same time there's an acceptance that there are many things that are unknowable for us in this lifetime, in these bodies, in this, as you said, reincarnation. And so I think being present for that exploration and embedding yourself in a community of people who also are awake to that is, as you said, the medicine.
Yeah, our associations are such a major influencer, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like to acknowledge that and to find your tribe, to find the people you resonate with. There's people where I see them, I don't even know them, and I just want to go up to them and just make friends with them because I just see. It's like I want you in my life. So it's really precious, the people in our lives, and it's something to, like, in a way, like, scout those people out and draw them in, like interesting people that are activated, awake, because that's going to be what you're associating with within your consciousness, within your feeling, and they're going to spark something in you, you're going to spark something in them, and we just start this wildfire. But there's something that you touched on earlier when you were talking, and it reminded me of my teacher. He was talking about the scales of frequency, and one of the highest frequencies is actually when we're in meditation and we're in that pure presence, and there's just, the brain, when the brain waves slow down and we go into that parasympathetic, and we're just really in that sweetness of experiencing the subtleties of our nervous system, of our awareness, our breath. And there's something there, that creates a space and opens a door for this creative power and that we have. And then as we move down the scales of frequency, we're into gratitude and love, and then we go down, and then eventually we get to anger, and then below that is guilt and shame. and then below that is crime, he was saying. And so this we start to see like our culture and is just so in this guilt and shame, and we get stuck in this and we believe in it, and it's like I love just to acknowledge these aspects and to let go of that guilt and shame, and to just get back up, to redraw your bow, and to be embrace that innocence of a child and be like, just meet the day brand new. You're free, you know. Let's just do this again. Let's just, let's get it. Let's go for it today. What can I do today to really ignite me, and break these patterns and just bring in these new energies and open those doors for these new energies to come alive and to carry those energies in life.
If you enjoyed the first half of our conversation, you're going to love the second half, which is in our next episode. Rudy opens up about how a near-death experience from a motorcycle accident radically put all of his spiritual practices to the test. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Art of Lost and Found podcast. I hope that you are feeling inspired and empowered to go forth and explore your curiosity and creativity. As always, if you want any more information about any of our guests or the show notes or anything we discussed on today's episode, you can head over to www.brookeeston.com/podcast. Thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.